Welcome back, everybody. This is Watts of Faith here. We're doing another Bible study episode today. We're talking about 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 1 through 18, if you want to follow along in your Bible. Today we're talking about the prophet Elijah. He's at one of his lowest moments here. Let's just go ahead and jump into it. When Ahab got home, he told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, including the way he had killed all the prophets of Baal. So Jezebel sent this message to Elijah. May the gods strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you, just as you killed them. Elijah was afraid and fled for his life. He went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. In verses 1 through 4, we see Elijah deeply distressed. He's afraid for his life. The queen has just threatened to kill him. Now he's wondering, what do I do? He's afraid. He leaves his servant. He goes into the wilderness. He wanders off by himself, and he's struggling at this point. It's important to realize here that Elijah had just won a huge victory in chapters 18, performing wonderful miracles that the Lord has allowed him to perform. He brought fire down, he brought rain down. He did a lot of things on Mount Carmel, and now he's struggling, and now he just had a huge victory, but now he's distressed and he's wondering, what to do next. And a lot of people in the Bible have gone through this before. They perform great things, and then they seem to almost forget what they've done, or maybe they're just tired from all the work that they've done, and now they're physically tired, they're emotionally tired, they're spiritually tired, and they need help. But instead of running to community or calling out to God for help, they tend to isolate themselves. And this is what a lot of us do as well. We tend to isolate when we're feeling distressed or we're sad or we're depressed. We isolate instead of running to our community or calling out to God. I myself have definitely gone through this. Instead of calling out to God or leaning on my community or asking for help, I will isolate. And when you isolate, it tends to distort your reality of what's really going on in life. You isolate, you're within your own thoughts. That's when the thoughts of, suicide or ending your own life might come into play. And that's exactly what happened for Elijah. And that's exactly what happened to me in my life as well. I'm one who, I spent 2 days in a hospital last year because I wanted to end my own life. And there were these thoughts that were so strong, and I didn't really know what to do, but eventually I ended up getting help and started focusing more on my mental health and really getting back to God and calling on God and really leaning on Him to help me. We'll continue to read here verses 5 through 8. Then he lay down and slept under the broom tree. But as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. Then the angel of the Lord came again and touched him and said, "Get up and eat some more, or the journey ahead will be too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank, and the food gave him enough strength to travel 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. This is revealing because even in your darkest moments, in your darkest days, when you're feeling exhausted, you're tired, God will provide for you. God shows His grace here because instead of rebuking Elijah for not calling out to Him or maybe not doing the best thing for him, we see what He did here. He provided for him. So this is the kind of God that we serve, a God who will always be there for you, even in your darkest times and your toughest moments. Sometimes all we really truly need is to rest and rely on God and just know that at the end of the day, He will come through for you, just like He came through for me, just like He came through for Elijah, Moses, and so many people before him. The angel's message here, when the angel tapped him on the shoulder, told him to get up and eat food, that's kind of a foreshadowing here of how God will provide for us, just how we just said. But God will provide. He is an almighty God. He's faithful, and He truly wants us to succeed because He has a plan for us. No matter what we think, no matter what we've gone through in the past, we have a purpose in this life. We might not always know what that is, but there is a plan. God has that plan. We just have to trust him in that. We'll continue to read here from verse 9 to 14. There he came to a cave where he spent the night. But the Lord said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah replied, "I have zealously served the Lord God Almighty. But the people of Israel have broken their covenant with you, torn down your altars, and killed every one of your prophets. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too. Go out and stand before me on the mountain," the Lord told him. And as Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by, and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, there was a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was a sound of gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And a voice said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" So here we see Elijah. He's just reached a cave. He ends up spending the night there, and God speaks to him. He says, "Elijah, what are you doing here?" And here, I don't think that God was saying this because he didn't know what Elijah was doing there, but he probably wanted Elijah to reflect and really take a look at his life and what was going on in his life and realize that, he's going through a difficult struggle, but it's not the end of the road. And I think he wanted him to realize that for himself. And he wanted Elijah to realize that just because he isolated himself in that reality that he is facing might be a distorted reality of what is actually going on. There's still hope at the end of the day for Elijah. There's still things that Elijah has to accomplish, and there's still road in front of Elijah that he has to travel down and get to the end, to his goal, his end result. Elijah replies, that he has zealously served God, but Israel has rejected him, killed his prophets, and now he's the only one left. As we find out that this isn't really the case, Elijah isn't the only one left. There are still people who are serving the Lord, but Elijah, because he isolated himself and his reality is distorted, he is unable to see what is really going on, and he lets that fear. He really lets that fear overtake him and lets fear guide his decisions. God next tells him to stand before me. A powerful wind comes, but God is not in the wind. An earthquake comes, God is not in the earthquake. And next a fire comes, and God is not in the fire. And next comes a gentle whisper. This is just a reminder that God can do amazing things, wonderful things, things that will open our eyes to his wonder and his glory, but that's not always the time that God is truly speaking to us. A lot of times you really find God in those intimate moments, those times where you're in your room by yourself and you're reading the Bible, or you might even be scrolling through Instagram and you see a Bible verse, and that could be God speaking to you, not in the, "Hey, let me move this mountain," or, "Let me get these people out of your way." Sometimes it's small, it's quiet, it's gentle. And that's why we have to remove a lot of distractions out of our life so we can really focus on what God is trying to tell us. This is also an example of where I think fasting comes into play. There's a Bible verse where God is speaking on his Mount on the Sermon, and he says, "When you fast." That doesn't say if you fast, or maybe one day you'll fast and you'll realize this, but he says when, meaning that this is something that, as a follower of Christ, this is something that all of us should try to do, or not try to do. This is something that we should all do as a way to kind of starve the flesh and remove distractions, so we can really closer to God and have that personal relationship with him and allow him to speak and move in our lives. Finally, Elijah, he hears that small whisper. He covers his face and comes out, and God repeats, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He's asking this again. And if you're hearing God speak to you and he's saying something over and over and over again, you probably haven't either gotten what he's really trying to say. Maybe he really wants you to reflect on your personal experiences. I can't tell you what he is saying to you, but if he's saying it over and over again, there's a reason behind it. Here, we'll go ahead and read the rest, 15 to 18, and we'll jump into it. And he says, "Then the Lord told him, 'Go back the same way you came and travel to the wilderness of Damascus. When you arrive there, anoint Hazael to be king of Aram. Then anoint Jehu, grandson of Nimshi, to be king of Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from the town of Abel Meholah, to replace you as my prophet. Anyone who escapes from Hazael will be killed by Jehu, and those who escape Jehu will be killed by Elisha. Yet I will preserve 7,000 others in Israel who have never bowed down to Baal or kissed him. Here we see that Elijah's job is not finished yet. He still has more work to be done, just like we were talking about here. Elijah, he was depressed. He isolated himself. The isolation distorted his reality of what was really going on. God tells him there's 7,000 Israelites who are still worshiping me and still doing the right things, and he's going to save their lives, saying Elijah's not alone like he thought he was. He has to anoint the next king. He's going to anoint the next prophet that is going to come up after him. Truly, he's not alone. He has people in his corner. He just has to seek them. And that's what we have to do, is just seek people in our community. God places people in our lives for a reason. He places people in our lives so we don't have to go through life alone. Sometimes he's going to place you in other people's lives so you can be the one to help them out when they're weak. Just like there's been people in your life who have helped you, when you were weak. So it's extremely important. I can't say this enough, but it's extremely important that we do not isolate ourselves in times of despair. And I say this speaking to myself, because I am one who so many times in my life have just thought I was done. I wanted my life to end, and I just stayed by myself. And that definitely was not the right thing to do. I definitely could have done things better, but I'm not going to beat myself up for that. I just want to learn from those situations and just be better the next time. This whole passage here on Elijah, it truly speaks to, even the strongest believers, even a prophet of God, can still feel distressed. He can still get down on himself. He can still feel like everything is caving in against him. He's human just like we are human. We can't beat ourselves up for feeling this way or for feeling any of the feelings that we feel. All of your feelings are valid, but it doesn't mean that all of those feelings are necessarily true. Because Elijah felt like he was alone. And we come to find out that there's still 7,000 people in Israel who haven't worshiped Baal. They're not all gone. He's not alone. There's still the next king. There's still the next prophet. All of these people that, instead of isolating himself, he could have ran to and called on. And most importantly, he could have called on God, because God, it truly is always there. A lot of times when we feel like giving up, that's when God is calling us to do more. And that more doesn't always mean work harder. Sometimes that might mean rest and then continue. Just like Elijah, God allowed him to get rest. He provided and fed for him, gave him water, and then said, now go on your way, finish your journey. Your job's not done. One of the biggest things I take away from these verses here is just that, there's going to be times where you feel like you can't do it alone. And that's probably telling you something that you shouldn't be doing it alone. There's going to be times where you don't know what to do next, but God supernaturally will come and he will provide for you. There's going to be times where you might not be able to pay that bill. You don't know when your next meal is going to come from, but somehow, some way that bill gets paid. There's food on your table, and it's bad, but it might not be as bad as you really think. So you can't isolate yourself. You have to keep moving forward. Take that rest when you need it, and call out to God. Most importantly, call out to God so that he can help you. I would just encourage you to just keep going. Don't stop. Listen to yourself. Listen to your bodies. If you need rest, take it, but just know that your job's not done. If you're feeling like that, know that on the other side of that could be your breakthrough. You never know when that's going to come. You never know what God's plan is, so you just have to trust him at all times. If you're ever in a tough season, just know that God sees you. And just know that you have people in your corner who want you to succeed. They want the best for you. That isolation may be distorting your reality, just like it was distorting my reality. And I'm thankful that I'm still here. I'm thankful that I have a purpose, a God-given purpose, to share my story, share my testimony, and spread the gospel, because there's so many people out there that need it. And sometimes you may be the only God that people see. So it's important to be there for people. It's important to be in people's corner. It's important to not beat yourself up for being in these situations, but understand that it will get better with time. And with God in your life, things will always work out in the end. Thank you for today. Thank you for joining. If you like this message, like and subscribe and send this to somebody who might need to hear it.